All right, so hey guys, Mr. Ridgway here. Make sure everything looks right on my end here real fast. There we go. So we are going to be looking at our second lesson for VU, and that's going to be Eager European Explorers. We're going to be checking them out and kind of see what some of their motivations are, look at a couple examples, and then, yeah, I think that's just about it. So to get you started here, I've got a choose your own journey story. It's right here. You just click the map. Please try lots of different options, different genders, different locations, different, like you can be born rich or born poor. Try both those, and just kind of give it a good playthrough. And what you'll find is that a lot of the themes that we get to in here, we're going to pick up on here in our mini lesson that we're about to do. Okay? So here's our exact objectives for today. It says explain the cause of Europeans to explore the Americas and name a few examples. And then down here, deconstruct the impact of Columbus's and Magellan's voyages. So as you can see, deconstruct, we're going to be doing some myth busting with Columbus and Magellan. And then also, again, just talking about like some of the general trends of why Europeans began looking at the Americas and wanting to explore. All right, so here's our mini lesson. So our essential questions are pretty straightforward. When most history people talk about migration, they look at it in terms of push and pull factors. So we'll define those as well as talk about our examples here in this case. So from the Choose Your Own Journey game, you probably saw several trends, okay? And one of them is that the options for lots of Europeans are extremely limited at this time. And there's a bunch of reasons why. So first of all, again, you probably noticed like if you played as female, like your options of seafaring were pretty much just off the books entirely. But then also, because of the laws of primogeniture and some other ones, that meant that the eldest son couldn't travel. And so what we start to see there in Europe is a very strong push factor happening. So a push factor is something that kicks you out of a current location, right? So in Europe, again, 1400s, 1500s, etc., we're seeing kind of the remnants of a system called the feudal system. And something about the feudal system, without getting too far into world history, is that social classes are incredibly sticky. And it's very, very difficult for people to have social mobility up and down the ladder. Somebody wouldn't go from being like a peasant to a noble in one life. That just wasn't really a thing. So what we start to see from this is that if you are not going to be inheriting the wealth of your family, you don't have very many opportunities for social mobility, except for maybe like getting into like trade or something like that. So what we find is that a lot of these, in particular, younger sons, their families basically say to them like, okay, you're not going to inherit anything. Go make something yourself. And they might get involved in business. Many of them they would send into the military. And so people like Hernan Cortez, they have military experience before they go off and start becoming conquistadors. So again, you can see there how primogeniture and laws about the feudal system help kind of kick some Europeans into exploring. But really what the other half of this is that we have pull factors, and you might have heard of these called the three G's. Okay, and very simply, it's God, gold, glory. But what you need to understand is that that's just a recall device. You actually need to understand like the implications of what we mean by the three G's. What is pulling Europeans to go and explore other places? Okay, drawing them to it. So what do we mean by God? Well, yes, clearly that's implying Christianity, but you need to understand for Europeans, there are competing brands of Christianity that's driving them to try to even, in many cases, try to out-explore the people around them. So, for example, Spain would be trying to spread Catholic Christianity, as would France. But England is trying to spread, as time goes on, Protestant Christianity. And so we have this kind of competition between European powers. And they legitimately believe that as they begin to encounter First Nations people in the Americas, that if they do not expose them to the right kind of Christianity, that their souls are damned to hell. And they firmly believe this. Now, it's very easy for us in the modern day to look back at that and be like, well, that's silly and ridiculous. But they fervently believe it. So that's kind of what we are implying there by the God in the three G's. Gold is pretty straightforward, but you need to realize that we just don't mean only gold. It could be spices, could be trade routes, anything basically of value, right? Glory. This one's probably the most straightforward at all. Some individuals who go out on these trips, they simply like this is their chance to make it, either famously or in fact infamously. The big picture though is something that we ought to take a look at here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to very briefly go to Google Maps and show you this, because this is probably the best way to understand this. So what we've got, okay, and I'm going to zoom out here. All right, so here's our globe, right? So when we're looking at Europe about this time, okay, so here's Europe. And again, where they're getting most of their trade goods is here in Asia, right? And again, 1500s, there are absolutely trade routes that have been very long and very well established. Things like the Silk Road, but then, of course, sea trade and things like that have been going for a long time. And Europeans know that, things like cloves and pepper and, cinnamon are out there in Asia, and they desperately want them. Because basically, short things all being short, their food kind of sucks. And so does, preserving, other things that we would like to have, like porcelain. And so what happens then, okay, we're kind of speaking here about the 1400s, 1500s, etc., is that there's a new power that comes along right here called the Ottoman Empire. And what the Ottomans do is they don't shut down the trade routes, but they jack up the prices like crazy. Okay, they're like a toll keeper. And the Europeans, they want to keep getting their fix. And so, well, what do you do now? Like, your main trade route is closed. And so Europeans think about it, like, they can either keep paying the fee, right, which sucks, or, like, what if, like, they could sail around Africa and then, like, up there, right, which is what they start to explore. It's Bartholomew Diaz who does that, who's the first one to round the Cape of, it's the Cape of South Africa down there at the very bottom. And then other Europeans are like, but wait, what if we like go this way? And as you're going to see, the person who's infamous for doing this, he actually does it because he doesn't think the globe is the right size it is. Europeans knew that the globe was round, but they didn't know that this landmass right here existed. And so they never thought that their food stores would make it all the way over here to Asia. But as you're going to see, one man is so incompetent and so stupid that he accidentally, kind of runs into part of this landmass by mistake. Again, now, how do we tie this all together? That's kind of like the big picture you want to know. The reason why Europeans are exploring is because they're trying to get around the Ottomans. What we call that then is once they realize there's a landmass there, is they're trying to find something called the Northwest Passage. And so if we go back to our map briefly, if you saw Henry Hudson in the Choose Your Own Adventure game there, so like Hudson, for example, sailing for England, like he comes up here and he gets into Hudson Bay and he just bounces around for a while. They can't find a way through here because at that time it's mostly frozen over. So again, the whole Northwest Passage thing is going to kind of get frustrated. All right, so that's going to end our mini lesson here. I also put a map of all the other different explorers who, attempted things. Some of these were in your Choose Your Own Adventure story. It's nothing you need to memorize, but something that I encourage you to, think about these guys in the context of those 3Gs and other factors. So a really good idea before you go is to do something that says this, the 360 no-scope. What does this mean? This is a little technique you can try that helps you practice for quizzes and tests. And so what you do is you close your notes, anything you've written so far, and you write down everything that you can remember about what you just learned in this mini lesson in only 60 seconds. And this is like a brain dump, right? But what you're actually training your brain to do is to retrieve the information that you stored. And so you're actually doing the same like intellectual weightlifting that you would actually have to do on a quiz or a test. And so this practice is really, really valuable because it's actually like how your brain operates on those assessments. So go ahead and give this a try. When you're ready, you can go on with me to the next stuff because we're almost done. There's two videos here that you're going to watch, and this is doing a little bit of myth busting on Columbus and then also kind of deconstructing the importance of Magellan. Now, I'm not going to play the videos for these just because of copyright issues. There's space on your notes where you can write down some important points about them. I would encourage you to again, think about Columbus in context here. Adam Ruins Everything does a really good job about breaking him down and, why people still think of Columbus Day like it's a holiday or how that even came to be. But then Magellan here, I will take a minute and kind of help explain a couple of very important things with him. Again, things that I would like to have you pull out of that video. So the thing that you need to understand about Magellan, okay, is so when Columbus hits here, okay, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, etc., and again does those pretty awful things that he does, when he comes back and after time has gone on, Europeans realize that, oh crap, that's not Asia, like this is something else. And so what happens is that there are two major seafaring powers at the time, and it's these two right here, Portugal and Spain, which is kind of weird to think about. It's not like two powers that we think of like being really, really strong nowadays. But what happens is that Europeans are so scared, especially just Europe, generally, some of, other people like the British and etc. They're worried that a war is going to break out over all this. And so what happens is the Pope steps in. That's what we call the Treaty of Tordesillas. You'll see the spelling on the video. But what this treaty does is it cuts a line about right here on the globe. And everything to the west of that line was supposed to be Spain's. Everything over to the east down here, like in the Indian Ocean, was supposed to be Portugal's. The problem, though, that the Spanish they're looking at this issue, right? Because Portugal's like, well, we already made it over here to India. Like, we know this is possible. They had explorers already do that. And so for the Spanish, they're like, well, crap, this thing isn't India. Like, we still need to get our fix. What are we going to do? And so that's where Magellan steps in. He's kind of thrust into this world where, like, they're like, okay, dang it. Like, we can't get around this huge landmass that's blocking us. What if, and this is what Magellan says he can do to the King of Spain, King Charles. He says, hey, I'm going to go, like, what if I, like, go all the way around like this through the Pacific, get to the Spice Islands, as they were then known, and then sail all the way back around. Now, he almost makes it, right? But, again, kind of understanding the importance of Magellan in the context of, like, bigger world powers kind of fighting back and forth about who should have influence, it's important. And it's important in a bunch of ways, because, like, for example, you'll notice, like, almost every nation in South America, Central America, speaks Spanish, except for one, Brazil, and that's because a Portuguese ship accidentally landed there. But with that exception, okay, it's why, for example, Portugal has much more influence over this part of the world at this time, and why Spain has kind of a more lasting influence over here, okay? So, other than that, the last thing in this lesson that's here is said, why did Cortez win? So, last class I assigned this to you, but I thought what I would do as well is encourage you. I saw that some of you had gotten this reading done. If you haven't, that's okay. But I highly encourage you to think about, on this last slide, there's a link there, or you can just do this with your own post-it notes. Not just to do a reading and then just, like, leave it alone. It's really important that you take some time to actually process what you've learned. And so the way that you can do this right here is just a very simple T-chart. There's post-it notes that you can drag and drop here about why Cortez won, but I'll go ahead and move my face so you can see the other part. I'd like you to take some time and also maybe go back and revisit the article and look at it from a different perspective, why the Aztec lost. So once you've done those things, I'm not collecting the T-chart, but it's something that I promise will help you. Once you've done that, that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, bye-bye.